8 months of Google searches for Nancy Guthrie's address. A reconnaissance visit to her home weeks before she disappeared. Equipment purchased specifically for this crime. A masked suspect who knew exactly where cameras were positioned and how to approach the property to avoid detection. Every piece of evidence investigators have gathered points in the same direction. This was not a random crime. This was not an opportunistic attack by someone who happened to be in the neighborhood and saw a vulnerable elderly woman through a window. This was not a burglar looking for easy targets who chose Nancy's home by chance. This was targeted. This was planned meticulously over months. This was someone who chose Nancy Guthrie specifically, who studied her home for months beginning as far back as June 2025, who prepared methodically acquiring equipment and knowledge, and who executed a plan on February 1, 2026 that had been developing for at least 8 months and possibly longer. The distinction between random crimes and targeted crimes is fundamental to understanding what happened to Nancy and to understanding what investigators are looking for and how they are approaching this case and where they are focusing resources and what kind of suspect profile they are building. Random crimes are opportunistic by nature. A perpetrator with general criminal intent sees a vulnerable target in the moment, an unlocked door that provides easy entry, an isolated person who appears unable to defend themselves, a situation that presents opportunity without apparent risk, and acts on impulse without advanced planning or research about the victim. Targeted crimes are the opposite in almost every characteristic. The perpetrator selects a specific victim for specific reasons that matter to the perpetrator, studies that victim's routine and environment through surveillance or research, plans the approach and execution considering all the factors that could affect success, acquires equipment or resources needed for the plan, and strikes when conditions are optimal based on knowledge gained through the preparation period. The evidence in Nancy's case overwhelmingly indicates targeting rather than randomness. Every major piece of evidence points to planning and preparation and specific selection of Nancy as the victim, and understanding why she was chosen, what made her a target rather than any other elderly person in Tucson, what connections or circumstances or characteristics led someone to select her specifically, and to devote 8 months to planning a crime against her, is critical to identifying who took her. The why leads to the who in targeted crimes because targeting creates connections between offender and victim that random crimes do not create. If you want to understand what evidence distinguishes targeted crimes from random opportunistic attacks, and why those distinctions matter so profoundly for investigations, why the 8-month Google search timeline proves this was planned rather than impulsive, and what that timeline tells us about the perpetrator's psychology and capability, what the prior reconnaissance visit tells us about the perpetrator's methodology and level of sophistication and commitment to the plan, how behavioral analysts and criminal profilers assess targeting versus random selection and what patterns they look for in evidence, what Nancy's connection to Savannah Guthrie as a high-profile celebrity daughter might have meant to someone planning this crime and what motivations that connection could create, why equipment preparation and camera knowledge indicate specific planning rather than general criminal activity, and what those details reveal about how much the perpetrator knew. Before February 1st, what all of this evidence about targeting tells investigators about the type of person they should be looking for and where that person might have connections to Nancy or her family and what databases or sources they should search, and how understanding that this was targeted rather than random fundamentally changes the investigative approach and creates opportunities that do not exist when crimes are random. Then subscribe to True Crime Vault right now. This channel provides evidence-based analysis without speculation or sensationalism, breaking down what the facts actually tell us about cases, rather than inventing theories or making accusations without foundation or jumping to conclusions that evidence does not support. Hit that subscribe button and turn on all notifications, because this case continues to develop with new evidence and new search operations and new investigative developments, and understanding the fundamental nature of the crime, that it was targeted rather than random, shapes how we interpret every piece of new evidence that emerges and what that evidence means for identifying the perpetrator. Hit the like button as well because detailed analysis of criminal behavior patterns and evidence interpretation deserves to reach everyone following this case and everyone interested in understanding how modern investigations work. And comment below with your thoughts on why Nancy was specifically targeted and what connections the perpetrator might have had to her or her family, Or what motivation would lead someone to spend 8 months planning a crime against an 84-year-old woman? Now let us examine systematically and in comprehensive detail what evidence proves this was a targeted attack, what behavioral analysis tells us about perpetrators who target specific victims, and what the targeting reveals about who investigators should be looking for. The clearest, most definitive, and most compelling evidence that Nancy was specifically targeted rather than randomly selected is the Google search timeline that Fox News reported on February 18th, based on analysis of Google Trends data. That timeline showed searches for Nancy's home address going back 8 months before she disappeared. Let me walk through that timeline in detail because every data point matters, and because the pattern across those 8 months tells a story of sustained focus on Nancy that is completely incompatible with random crime. A search for Nancy's specific residential address occurred between June 21st and June 28th, 2025. That is 7 to 8 months before Nancy was taken on February 1st, 2026. Someone was researching where Nancy lived in late June of 2025. Someone entered her specific address into Google search at that time. That search in June represents the earliest documented evidence of interest in Nancy, though it is certainly possible that interest or planning began even earlier through methods that do not leave digital trails, or through searches that did not show up in trends data because they occurred less frequently. Image searches for Nancy's property occurred between March 1st and March 8th, 2025. That is 11 months before the crime. Image searches are particularly significant because they indicate someone was not just looking for address information, but was looking at visual representations of the property. Why would someone search for images of a residential property? Normal reasons are extremely limited. Real estate interest would involve looking at listing photos showing interiors and providing pricing information. But searching for images of a specific address when you already know the address suggests studying the exterior appearance, the landscaping, the relationship between buildings and streets, the visibility from neighboring properties, all the visual information that someone planning to approach that property would want to understand in advance. Another image search occurred between November 30th and December 1st, 2025, 2 months before Nancy was taken. This represents returning 2 image searches after an 8-month gap since the previous image search in March. That return suggests renewed focus or entering a new phase of planning where visual study of the property became important again, perhaps in preparation for a reconnaissance visit or in preparation for finalizing the approach plan. A search for Savannah Guthrie's salary occurred between December 13th and December 20th, 2025, approximately 6 weeks before Nancy disappeared. This search explicitly connects the research to Savannah, Nancy's daughter and co-anchor of the Today Show on NBC. Why would someone who has been researching Nancy's address for months suddenly search for how much money Savannah makes? The most logical explanation, and the explanation that makes sense in context of everything else that happened, is that the person was assessing whether this family would be worth targeting for financial gain through kidnapping for ransom. Savannah is one of the highest profile figures in television news. Her salary is substantial, though exact figures are not publicly disclosed. Someone researching that salary in mid-December was likely evaluating whether kidnapping Nancy and demanding ransom from Savannah would be financially lucrative enough to justify the risk and effort. And a final address search occurred on January 11th, 2026, exactly 3 weeks before Nancy was taken. This January 11th date has significance beyond just the Google search, because multiple other pieces of evidence point to mid-January as potentially important in this case. Multiple neighbors reported seeing suspicious individuals in the area in mid-January. Aldine Meister saw a man who struck her as not fitting the neighborhood, someone with his hat pulled far over his eyes who did not appear to be out for a normal walk. That sighting occurred in mid-January. Doorbell camera footage reportedly captured a prior visit by the masked suspect according to ABC News, Fox News, and CBS News reporting, with authorities examining images that show the suspect at Nancy's door on different occasions with different equipment configurations suggesting reconnaissance. January 11th may represent when that reconnaissance visit occurred. That 8-month timeline from June 2025 to February 2026 with multiple search events across that period is completely incompatible with random crime. Random crimes, by definition, do not involve 8 months of online research about a specific victim. Random crimes happen when opportunity presents itself to someone with general criminal intent who is looking for any suitable victim. A burglar driving through neighborhoods looking for houses that appear empty or vulnerable sees one and acts. A carjacker in a parking lot sees someone alone getting into a vehicle and approaches. A mugger walking through an area sees someone isolated and targets them. Those crimes are opportunistic reactions to perceived vulnerability without advanced planning specific to that victim and without research about who that victim is. But searching for a specific address 8 months before committing a crime at that address represents the absolute opposite of opportunism. It represents deliberate victim selection through a process that began no later than June 2025. Someone identified Nancy Guthrie as a target, as someone worth planning a crime against, as someone whose circumstances made her attractive for whatever motivation was driving the planning. Someone searched for information about where she lived so that the property could be studied. Someone looked at images of her property multiple times across months to understand the layout and appearance and access points. Someone researched Savannah's salary to assess the financial potential of targeting this family. Someone continued researching over months, returning to the subject repeatedly, maintaining focus on this potential target across a timeline that included major holidays and seasonal changes and all the distractions of normal life. And someone finally acted on February 1st after completing whatever preparation was necessary to execute the plan that had been developing since at least June. That timeline proves targeting beyond any reasonable doubt. No alternative explanation makes sense. The searches were not academic research or journalism because journalists do not search for private residential addresses of sources' family members and do not research subjects for 8 months before writing stories. The searches were not casual curiosity because casual curiosity does not sustain for 8 months with multiple returns to the same subject. The searches were not real estate interest because property buyers do not research one specific address for 8 months, including searching for salary information about residents' family members. The only explanation that fits all the evidence is that someone was planning a crime, identified Nancy as the target, and researched her over months in preparation. Subscribe to True Crime Vault if you have not already. Make sure notifications are turned on. Like this video so the algorithm shows it to more people interested in serious evidence-based analysis. Visit our channel for all previous comprehensive coverage. Comment with your analysis of why 8 months of research preceded this crime. Now let me explain in detail what image searches tell us about the perpetrator's preparation and thinking. When someone searches for images of a residential property they are planning to target, they are seeking specific types of information that text-based searches about addresses cannot provide. Street view images from mapping services show the property from the perspective of someone approaching on foot or by vehicle from the street. Those images show what the house looks like from the road. They show landscaping and trees that might provide cover or concealment. They show the position of the house relative to neighboring properties and whether there are sight lines from those neighbors that could allow witnesses to see someone approaching. They show street lighting and whether the property is well lit or dark at night. They show driveways and walkways and all the physical features that someone planning to approach that property would need to understand. Aerial images or satellite images show the property from above. Those images reveal the overall layout of the property, including outbuildings, pools, yards, and the relationship between structures. They show how much land surrounds the house and whether there are areas where someone could approach without being visible from the street or from neighbors. They show whether the backyard is fenced and how that fence could be accessed. They show vegetation and trees from a perspective that helps understand where cameras might be positioned to monitor different areas of the property. Property images, if available through real estate history or through other sources, might show details of the house itself, including entry points like doors and windows and architectural features that affect how the property could be entered. While most property images available online focus on interiors for real estate purposes, sometimes exterior images from old listings or from neighborhood databases show angles and details not visible in street view. Someone conducting image searches for Nancy's property in March 2025 and again in November 2025 was gathering all of this visual intelligence. They were studying what the property looks like from every available angle. They were identifying potential approaches. They were assessing visibility and exposure. They were planning how to get from the street to the house without being seen. They were determining where cameras might be positioned based on typical security setups for properties of that type. All of that study, conducted from the safety and anonymity of an internet connection months before the crime, allowed planning that made execution much more likely to succeed. The fact that image searches occurred in March and again in November, 8 months apart, suggests either that the perpetrator returned to review information already gathered as planning progressed, or that circumstances changed requiring updated visual study, or that the perpetrator wanted to check whether anything about the property had changed since the first study. Any of those explanations indicates methodical, ongoing attention to detail rather than impulsive action. Now let me discuss the search for Savannah Guthrie's salary and what that reveals about motivation. Searching for how much money someone makes is unusual behavior in general. Most people do not research the salaries of public figures unless they have specific reasons. Financial journalists might research salaries for stories. People considering career paths might research salaries in professions they are interested in. But searching for the salary of one specific person who happens to be the daughter of someone whose address you have been researching for months creates a connection that is difficult to interpret as anything other than assessment for criminal financial gain. Savannah Guthrie is co-anchor of The Today Show, one of the most prestigious and high-profile positions in television news. Today Show anchors earn substantial salaries. Exact figures are not publicly disclosed, but industry estimates based on comparable positions suggest annual compensation in the millions of dollars. Someone researching that salary in December 2025, 6 weeks before taking Nancy, was almost certainly evaluating whether kidnapping Nancy and demanding ransom from Savannah would produce enough money to justify the significant risks involved in kidnapping. Kidnapping for ransom is among the most serious crimes with extremely severe penalties, including potential life sentences or even death penalty in some circumstances. Someone contemplating such a crime would want assurance that the potential payoff is substantial enough to balance those risks. Researching the victim's daughter's salary provides exactly that assurance. If Savannah makes several million per year, the family could potentially access significant sums quickly to pay ransom. That makes Nancy a more attractive target than an elderly person whose family does not have substantial resources. This salary research also connects to the ransom notes that were sent to TMZ after Nancy disappeared. 4 ransom notes total demanding $6 million with a deadline of February 9th for payment. The deadline passed without payment. The family did not pay or publicly engage with the ransom demands. That outcome could mean the ransom notes were fake, sent by someone unconnected to the actual abduction trying to insert themselves into the case or to create confusion. Or it could mean the ransom demands were legitimate from whoever took Nancy, but the family on law enforcement advice refused to pay or refused to negotiate publicly. Either way, the salary search in December shows that financial motivation through ransom was at minimum part of the thinking during the 8 months of planning, even if ransom ultimately was not successful or was not the actual primary motivation. That financial angle provides one possible answer to why Nancy was targeted. She is the mother of someone wealthy and high profile. Targeting her creates leverage to demand money from that wealthy family member. But financial motivation does not fully explain 8 months of planning for several reasons. First, kidnappers motivated purely by money typically act more quickly once they identify a target. 8 months of research seems excessive if the only goal is to identify someone whose family can pay ransom. Second, ransom kidnappings have become extremely rare in the United States because law enforcement has developed highly effective strategies for tracing ransom payments, and because the penalties are so severe that the risk-reward calculation does not favor kidnappers. Third, the failure to successfully collect ransom if these demands were legitimate suggests either the plan failed or money was not the primary motivation after all. That opens the possibility of other motivations for targeting Nancy specifically. Criminal profilers and behavioral analysts who have discussed this case in media coverage have identified several possible categories of motivation beyond pure financial gain. Let me examine each systematically. Revenge or grievance against Savannah represents one possibility. Someone who has real or perceived grievance against Savannah, who feels wronged by her or harmed by her or angry at her, might target her mother as a way of inflicting pain on Savannah. This is what is sometimes called proxy targeting, where the perpetrator cannot or does not want to attack the primary target directly, so they attack someone close to that target, knowing that causing harm to the loved one causes immense pain to the primary target. If someone is motivated by grievance against Savannah, then 8 months of planning to attack her mother makes sense as sustained focus driven by anger or resentment. Celebrity fixation or obsession represents another possibility. Public figures like Savannah, who appear on television daily, sometimes attract individuals who develop unhealthy obsessions. These individuals might believe they have relationships with the celebrity that do not actually exist. They might believe the celebrity is sending them messages through television broadcasts. They might develop elaborate fantasies involving themselves and the celebrity. When these fixations become severe, they can lead to stalking or attempts to insert themselves into the celebrity's life. Targeting the celebrity's mother could represent an attempt to create forced contact, to make Savannah aware of the perpetrator, to demonstrate power or importance to someone the perpetrator is fixated on. Crimes for notoriety represent a third possibility. Some criminals specifically choose high-profile targets because targeting someone connected to celebrity guarantees massive media attention. The crime becomes national news. The perpetrator becomes the subject of intense investigation and coverage. For someone motivated by desire for attention or desire to be important or relevant, targeting the mother of a major television personality provides that attention in ways that targeting an unknown person would not. Ideological or political motivation represents a fourth, though perhaps less likely possibility. Someone with grievances against mainstream media, or against NBC, or against what they perceive Savannah to represent, could target her family as an act of what they consider political expression. This is less common than the other categories, but cannot be entirely dismissed without evidence. Any of those motivations represent targeting based on who Nancy is in relation to Savannah, rather than targeting Nancy as an individual for characteristics or actions of her own. The evidence, particularly the salary search, does not definitively tell us which specific motivation applied or whether multiple motivations combined. The ransom attempts suggest financial motivation was at least part of the thinking, but the failure to successfully collect ransom, combined with the 8-month timeline, suggests complexity beyond simple financially motivated kidnapping. What we can determine with certainty from the evidence is that the 8 months of research, the reconnaissance visits, the equipment preparation, all indicate someone who specifically chose Nancy for specific reasons. Random criminals do not spend 8 months researching before acting. Targeting requires motivation. Something about Nancy or her family or her circumstances made her worth 8 months of planning to someone. Understanding what that something was, what connection or perceived connection or motivation drove this targeting, is central to identifying who did this. True Crime Vault provides expert analysis based on evidence. Subscribe now, turn on all notifications, like this video, visit our channel, comment below, and if you have information about anyone who showed unusual interest in Nancy or Savannah or in the Today Show or NBC, contact FBI at 1-800-CALL-FBI or Pima County Sheriff at 520-351-4900. Now let me analyze what the prior reconnaissance visit tells us about methodology and sophistication. The reporting by ABC News, Fox News, and CBS News in late February that doorbell camera images show the suspect at Nancy's home on different occasions with different equipment configurations indicating a prior visit in addition to the February 1st attack has significant investigative implications if accurate. Sheriff Nanos disputed this interpretation, saying authorities cannot confirm the images are from different days because the images lack visible timestamps. 3 news organizations with separate law enforcement sources reported that investigators believe a prior visit occurred. Whether that is definitively established or remains under debate, the possibility of reconnaissance fits perfectly with the 8-month search timeline, and with everything else we know about how this crime was planned. Reconnaissance visits are standard practice for criminals planning targeted attacks against specific locations. After online research identifies a target and provides basic information about the property and its surroundings, visiting the location in person provides information that online research simply cannot provide, no matter how thorough. What are the sight lines from neighboring properties at different times of day? Exactly where are security cameras positioned and what angles do they cover? What time do interior lights go on and off, suggesting the residents' routine and schedule? Are there dogs on the property or at neighboring properties that would bark at an intruder approaching? What are the specific access points to the property, and which ones provide the best approach with minimal exposure? Can the property be approached from multiple directions, or is there only one practical approach route? What is traffic like on the street at different hours? What is pedestrian activity like in the neighborhood? Are neighbors visible through windows at night? All of these questions and dozens more get answered only through direct observation that requires being physically present during conditions similar to when the crime will be committed. The suspect captured on Nancy's doorbell camera at 1:47 a.m. on February 1st demonstrated detailed knowledge of the property that almost certainly required prior in-person observation. The suspect approached directly to the doorbell camera and attempted to disable it first by tapping it gently, as if testing whether it was active, and then by covering it with plant foliage from landscaping near the door. That behavior indicates multiple pieces of knowledge. The suspect knew exactly where the camera was positioned. Many people have doorbell cameras, but they are not all in identical positions, and they are not always obvious from a distance, especially at night. Knowing exactly which doorbell or which location has the camera requires either having seen it during daylight when it is more visible or having studied property images closely enough to identify it. The suspect knew the camera needed to be disabled before proceeding with entry. That indicates understanding of how security systems work and awareness that footage would be saved and would later be used by investigators to identify the perpetrator. The attempt to disable shows consciousness of evidence and desire to avoid creating usable footage. The suspect knew that plants near the door could be used to cover the camera. That is extremely specific knowledge. Knowing which plants are positioned near enough to the camera that foliage can be pulled over to block the lens requires having seen those plants and their relationship to the camera. That knowledge cannot come from online images, which would not show that level of detail from the angles necessary. That knowledge requires having been at the property during daylight, when vegetation is visible, and when the relationship between plants and camera can be assessed. All of that knowledge supports reconnaissance visits occurring prior to February 1st. Someone came to Nancy's property at least once and possibly multiple times to study it in person. Someone observed during daylight to see the cameras and landscaping and layout. Someone possibly observed during evening or night hours to assess lighting and activity and visibility. And someone used all that gathered intelligence to plan the approach used on February 1st. The sophistication level this demonstrates is substantial. This is not amateur hour. This is not someone acting on impulse or on vague ideas. This is someone who understands operational security, who plans systematically, who gathers intelligence before acting, who takes time to ensure the plan has the best possible chance of success. That sophistication combined with the 8-month timeline indicates a perpetrator with patience, discipline, intelligence, and capability well above typical criminals. Now let me discuss what equipment preparation reveals. The Ozark Trail Hiker Pack backpack visible in the doorbell footage represents deliberate acquisition of equipment for this crime. The backpack is not expensive, sold exclusively at Walmart for under $50 typically, but someone made conscious decisions about what equipment would be needed and acquired that equipment in advance. Why a backpack? Why that specific model? Those decisions reflect thinking about operational needs. A backpack provides hands-free carrying of equipment which would be necessary if the suspect needed to physically control or carry Nancy. Hands occupied holding a bag cannot control a person, but a backpack worn on the back leaves both hands free for other tasks. That is basic operational thinking. A backpack provides secure storage that does not open accidentally. Equipment in a backpack stays in place even during physical activity or confrontation. That reliability is important when operating in high-stress situations. The specific Ozark Trail model has sufficient size to carry meaningful amounts of equipment without being so large as to be conspicuous or awkward. Someone wearing that backpack walking through a neighborhood at night would not immediately stand out as suspicious in the way that someone carrying obviously oversized luggage or equipment would. The choice of a relatively inexpensive model from Walmart rather than high-end expensive brand shows practical thinking. An expensive distinctive backpack could be more easily traced if witnesses saw it. A common inexpensive model is harder to trace because thousands of people own identical ones. All of those considerations suggest someone thinking through operational details systematically. Someone planning a random impulse crime does not go to Walmart weeks or months before to purchase a specific backpack for the crime. Opportunistic criminals use whatever is at hand. They grab a bag they already own. They stuff equipment in pockets. They act with whatever they have available. But targeted criminals prepare methodically. They think through what they will need for the specific crime they are planning. They acquire it in advance, giving themselves time to test it and familiarize themselves with using it. They plan contingencies and ensure they have resources to handle complications. The backpack purchase fits targeted crime methodology completely, and the fact that it is traceable through Walmart transaction records provides investigators a lead. Every purchase of that specific model in Tucson area Walmart stores in the months before February 1st can be traced. Credit and debit card purchases provide names directly. Cash purchases can be connected to individuals through security camera footage showing who made the purchase and through license plate captures in parking lots. That tracing work is almost certainly ongoing as part of the broader investigation. The gloves visible in footage and the glove found containing DNA also represent equipment preparation. The suspect wore gloves to avoid leaving fingerprints. That is basic crime scene awareness. But one glove was apparently lost or discarded near the property. That glove contained DNA that has been analyzed and entered into CODIS and is now being processed through forensic genealogy. The existence of DNA in the glove, despite the suspect wearing gloves, shows that gloves protect from fingerprints, but do not fully protect from DNA. Skin cells, sweat, hair, all can be present inside gloves worn by someone and can later be extracted for analysis. The weapon visible in footage holstered awkwardly, as FBI Director Kash Patel described the positioning as over the groin area, represents another piece of equipment brought to the scene. The suspect did not find a weapon at Nancy's home. The suspect brought a weapon planned in advance as part of the equipment needed for the crime. That weapon provided capability to threaten or control Nancy and provided backup option if confrontation became necessary. All of this equipment preparation, backpack and gloves and weapon, shows planning and thinking about what would be needed. Each piece serves a function. Each was acquired and brought to the scene deliberately. That preparation is completely characteristic of targeted crimes and completely unlike random opportunistic crimes. Subscribe to True Crime Vault for comprehensive ongoing coverage. Turn on notifications. Like this video. Visit our channel. Comment with your thoughts. Now let me examine what targeting evidence tells investigators about who they should be looking for and where. If this crime was targeted specifically at Nancy because of her connection to Savannah, that narrows the suspect pool dramatically compared to random crime scenarios. Instead of looking for any criminal anywhere who might commit home invasions or abductions, which is an essentially unlimited suspect pool that includes anyone with criminal history or criminal intent across the entire geographic area, investigators can focus on a much more defined and manageable population. They can look for people with connections to Savannah, people who follow her career and watch the Today Show regularly, people who have attempted to contact her or who have sent letters or messages to NBC or to the show, people who have grievances against her, whether real or perceived, people who have shown obsessive interest or fixation on her. That is a much smaller and much more defined suspect population that can be investigated systematically. If the crime was financially motivated, as the salary searches and ransom attempts suggest, investigators can focus on people with financial desperation or criminal history of financially motivated crimes. People who have committed kidnappings or attempted kidnappings before. People who have committed extortion or blackmail. People with severe financial problems who might see kidnapping as a solution. People who have researched or discussed kidnapping for ransom in communications or online activity. Again, that is a defined population smaller than all criminals. If it was motivated by grievance against Savannah, investigators can look for people with documented conflicts with her or with NBC or with the Today Show, former employees who were fired or who felt mistreated, people who have sent threatening communications, people who have made negative comments online about Savannah repeatedly over time, indicating sustained negative feelings. People who have had interactions with Savannah that ended badly from their perspective. If it was motivated by celebrity fixation, investigators can look for people with patterns of obsessive behavior, with history of stalking or attempting inappropriate contact with public figures, with mental health issues involving delusional thinking about relationships with celebrities, with collections of materials about Savannah or excessive following of her career and personal life. Each of those categories represents a narrowed suspect pool that can be investigated systematically through databases and records. NBC and the Today Show maintain security files on concerning communications they receive. Law enforcement databases track individuals with history of stalking or threats against public figures. Mental health records, if accessible through proper legal process, identify individuals with relevant patterns. Financial records identify people with desperate financial situations. All of these databases and records become relevant when you know the crime was targeted specifically at this victim for reasons related to her daughter. The 8-month timeline also narrows the search temporally. Whoever did this was researching Nancy's address back in June 2025. If investigators can identify through Google search subpoenas who made those searches by tracing the IP addresses back through internet service providers to subscriber accounts, that identification leads directly to suspects or to devices that suspects used. If they can identify through Walmart transaction and security camera records who purchased Ozark Trail backpacks in Tucson area in the months before February, that identification leads to suspects. If they can identify through camera footage enhancement who conducted reconnaissance at Nancy's property, that identification leads to suspects. If they can identify through DNA forensic genealogy whose genetic profile matches or is closely related to the DNA in the glove found at the scene, that leads to suspects. And when those separate independent investigations of different evidence types produce the same name through convergence, that name becomes the prime suspect with certainty. The power of targeting evidence is that it provides investigative direction. Random crimes are incredibly difficult to solve because the suspect pool is essentially everyone. Any criminal anywhere could have randomly targeted any victim they encountered. There is no connection to trace. There is no relationship to investigate. There is no reason the victim was chosen beyond bad luck of being in the wrong place when someone with criminal intent was present. But targeted crimes create connections between offender and victim even if those connections are indirect or one-sided. Those connections, once identified through evidence analysis, lead back from victim to offender. That is why investigators in major cases focus enormous effort on understanding motive and on understanding why this specific victim was chosen from among all possible victims. The answer to why this victim points directly toward who the offender is. If Nancy was targeted because she is Savannah's mother, then the offender has some connection to Savannah or knowledge of Savannah or interest in Savannah. That connection or knowledge or interest becomes the thread that investigators follow back to identify the offender. Behavioral analysis also provides insights about the perpetrator based on the planning timeline and execution quality. The 8 months from first documented Google search to execution of the crime indicates patience and discipline. Impulsive criminals cannot maintain focus on a plan for 8 months. They get distracted. They move on to other ideas. They act quickly when they conceive of a plan because waiting is difficult for people with poor impulse control. Someone who planned from June 2025 to February 2026, who maintained focus across holidays and seasons and all the events and distractions of 8 months of life, has personality characteristics enabling sustained focus over long periods. That suggests someone older and more mature rather than young, impulsive offenders. It suggests someone with capacity for delayed gratification, able to wait months for the right opportunity rather than needing immediate satisfaction. It suggests someone methodical who can plan in stages and execute complex plans. The organized execution of the crime indicates intelligence and capability. Successfully entering a home, abducting a resident, and leaving the property while transporting that resident without alerting neighbors who would call police, or without leaving obvious evidence that immediately identifies the perpetrator requires competence across multiple dimensions. You have to navigate to the location. You have to approach without being seen by neighbors. You have to disable security. You have to enter the home. You have to locate and control the victim. You have to remove the victim from the home and transport them. You have to do all of that without making noise that alerts neighbors, without leaving witnesses, without leaving evidence that immediately solves the case. The suspect in Nancy's case appears to have accomplished all of that because Nancy is missing and no suspect has been identified publicly after over 30 days. That level of execution is not achieved by incompetent criminals. This is someone capable of planning and executing complex criminal activity successfully. The specific targeting of an elderly woman rather than a younger, physically stronger victim might indicate the perpetrator assessed that Nancy would be easier to control. Physical confrontation with a younger, stronger person involves more risk of resistance, of the victim fighting back effectively, of the plan failing because the victim cannot be controlled. An 84-year-old woman can be overpowered more easily by most adults. She cannot run fast. She cannot fight effectively against someone younger and stronger. That vulnerability makes her a more manageable target. The selection of an elderly victim rather than someone more capable of resistance might indicate the perpetrator is not highly confident in physical confrontation and deliberately chose a victim who would not be able to resist effectively. All of these behavioral characteristics combine to create a profile that guides investigation. Methodical planner capable of sustaining focus over 8 months. Patient with capacity for delayed gratification. Intelligent enough to research and plan effectively. Capable of executing complex plans successfully, possibly not physically dominant, leading to deliberate selection of vulnerable victim. Connected somehow to Savannah or to knowledge of Savannah through media or through other means. Motivated by financial gain or by grievance or by obsession or by desire for notoriety or by some combination of factors. That profile narrows dramatically who investigators should look for compared to if this were a random attack where the profile would simply be any criminal willing to commit violent crimes. Nancy Guthrie has now been missing for over 30 days as of the day 30 reporting by Ashley Banfield. Every day that passes is another day of investigative work following the evidence of targeting to identify who targeted her and why. The Google searches are being traced through IP addresses obtained by subpoena from Google and through subscriber information obtained from internet service providers. The backpack purchases are being traced through Walmart transaction records and security footage. The DNA from the glove is being analyzed through forensic genealogy, building family trees from genetic matches. The camera footage from hundreds of sources throughout the Catalina foothills is being enhanced and analyzed and cross-referenced. The cell tower data is being obtained through subpoenas to carriers and analyzed for phones that were near Nancy's home at critical times and that traveled to suspicious locations afterward. All of that work is happening simultaneously across different teams using different specialties. And all of that work is guided by understanding that this was not random, that Nancy was specifically chosen, that the person who chose her has some connection or perceived connection that led to 8 months of planning. True Crime Vault will continue covering this case as it develops, providing comprehensive evidence-based analysis. Subscribe for ongoing coverage explaining what evidence means and how investigations work. Turn on notifications so you never miss updates. Like this video to support detailed analytical content. Visit our channel for all previous coverage analyzing every aspect of this case. Comment with your thoughts on why Nancy was targeted and what connections might exist. And remember that this 84-year-old woman taken from her home was not a random victim selected by chance. She was chosen deliberately after 8 months of research and planning. Understanding why she was chosen is the key to understanding who chose her. And that understanding will lead investigators through convergence of evidence to the person responsible. The evidence speaks clearly. 8-month search timeline proves planning. Multiple image searches prove sustained interest in the property. Salary search proves assessment of financial potential. Reconnaissance visit proves in-person intelligence gathering. Equipment purchase proves preparation. Camera knowledge proves study of security. Every element points to targeting rather than randomness. And that targeting creates connections between Nancy and the perpetrator, connections that random crime would not create. Those connections exist in databases, in records, in communications, in relationships, in online activity, in financial desperation, in grievances, in obsessions. Investigators are searching systematically through all those possibilities, tracing the threads that targeting creates back from victim to offender. Justice for Nancy depends on that tracing, on following targeting back to its source, on identifying who chose her and why. That work continues every day. Teams analyzing DNA, building family trees, teams tracing digital evidence through IP addresses, teams reviewing camera footage frame by frame, teams tracking retail purchases, teams analyzing cell tower data, all working toward convergence where multiple independent lines point to the same name. And when that convergence occurs, when DNA and digital trails and camera evidence and transaction records and cell data all point to one person, that person will be identified with certainty. The mask-protected identity in the doorbell footage. But masks cannot protect from DNA and from 8 months of digital footprints and from convergence of evidence from multiple sources. The targeting that made Nancy a specific victim creates the path back to who targeted her. And True Crime Vault will be here explaining every step until this case reaches resolution and Nancy's family gets the answers and justice they deserve.